Hello, and welcome to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your hosts, Brent Aiken, David Pruitt, and Russell Martin. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, Brent Aiken. Hey, and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to welcome you and invite you over to our website, studentministryconversations.org, where you can find all of our previous episodes, show notes, and blog articles. Our goal is that you are inspired, encouraged, and the things that you hear on this podcast can equip you to be a better student pastor for the church that you're serving in. So today we are sitting down with Stephen Hughes. He is a youth pastor in Tyler, Texas, and I'm not going to steal his thunder. I will let Stephen share about himself. So, man, welcome to the show, and let's start by you just telling us a little bit about you, what church you're at, where you're from, family, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on and letting me jump in. I've been in student ministry for, 3 or 4 years now. I'm currently in Tyler, as you mentioned, at a church downtown at Marvin Methodist. I've been here about a year and a half, and it has been a lot of fun. It's definitely different from where I grew up, but I love every minute of it. I have a wife. We've been married for 4 years. Her name is Ashley, and we've got 2 kids. Our daughter, Brinley, who's 3, and our son, Reese, who is about 19 months, 20 months. And they are just bundles of joy, super fun, give us laughs and stories every day, just jump into everything we do. And we are so incredibly blessed to have them and be doing ministry together. And I was part-time for a long time. I was traveling, playing drums in a worship band, a guy by the name of Tyler Murphy. He's based out of Austin. He kind of just brought me under his wing, and I was doing part-time youth ministry at my home church in Houston, and traveling with him, playing drums, doing summer camps and Disciple Nows and different youth retreats, and was just really getting mentored and loved it. And for a while towards the end of 2021, we felt like God was calling us out of where we were and into something else. We had no idea what that looked like, but we just started praying, and we were expecting our second kid, and COVID was still on the out and out, and we just get a phone call that was just like, hey, I don't know you, I don't know where you're at, but we have an opportunity and we just want to share it with you. And it truly was an answer to prayer. So we just jumped in both feet. Never lived in Tyler, never been to East Texas, but we jumped in, and God has been just super gracious to us and has really provided every step of the way. So it's been an awesome time being here right now, and we are really looking forward to the fall. I know many people are right now, really looking forward to school and all the programming. So we're really excited about everything going on.
That's awesome. And so today we are, for the people listening to this, Stephen came on the show. I actually got to meet Stephen this summer. We went to church camp together. And it was one of those things that after I met him, I was like, man, I want this guy on the podcast as well. And so it was just a great opportunity to get him on this week. And we're sitting down today to talk about establishing sustainable systems, or building systems that, well, are sustainable, as far as you can go, but without going into too much detail, I definitely want you to kind of elaborate on that. What do you mean when you say sustainable systems, and how are those used in ministry?
Yeah, so this is something I think has just been prevalent. We're coming from a church that was like 100 people max. My youth ministry was like 5 to 7 kids. And it was great. I was in a position, even part-time, or I could do everything. Like I could be the guy, I could go to all the things, I could provide all the resources, I could provide all the teaching into where we are now, which is, you know, we probably tripled, maybe quadrupled the size of the church that we were at, if not more than that. It's a foundational church. Like this year, it's celebrating its 175th anniversary. So,
Wow.
yeah, there's just a lot more going on, and there's just really strong, healthy ministries. And when I was coming in, they were kind of on this rebuilding process, and the guy that had been here for like 20 years had moved on and was ready to go out, and they had brought a team member on who had an injury and had to move home, and it just kind of like kept rolling, and they just kept, you know, like we've got to get things rebuilt. You know, we've got a lot of families who have aged out and a lot of families with high expectations, and you know, our church has expectations, and we need a system that is, you know, applicable. And so coming into having 5 to 7 kids, you know, and throughout my entire youth group, to coming in and having 15 to 20 in every single grade and every single gender, it's like in every single little small group, was drastically different, and was very apparent to me that, okay, we're going to have to develop some ways to connect with every student, make sure no student gets left behind, but I cannot be the sole provider anymore. And so for the last year and a half, you know, especially in the last 6 months or so, we have just been trying to develop this culture of sustainable systems where if I'm not here, things still go on, like things still happen. And in fact, I am not necessarily the entire face of the student ministry. There are parents and volunteers and leaders and church members who are actively engaged in these students' lives. And it is my job to create opportunities for that and to ensure that those people have correct training, that they are being poured into just as much as these students are. And so when I'm thinking about systems, I'm thinking about what if you weren't here for a week, would anyone notice that you were missing? And that's been kind of our tagline, of just, you cannot do it all. And
Yeah.
when you're existing in student ministry, that's kind of the expectation of like, man, you do all the things, and you're young, and you have the excitement, you have the energy, and it's just hard.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, you know, I went through playing drums, met a lot of student pastors, met a lot of youth ministry workers, and the things that set it apart is how much is the youth pastor doing versus how much are there people around him, and how much ownership are they taking of those things. And so kind of the systems that we've been establishing are ways that give ownership to volunteers and leaders, that let them have input, let them have freedom to make changes that still accomplish the student ministry's values, still accomplish the mission. But really it's creating opportunities for other people to be involved.
Yeah.
I've heard so many stories of, I called, a year ago and, haven't heard anything, or, I only do this, once a year, whatever. I help out with the youth Christmas party or youth fundraiser. But there are systems that can be established that really allow people just to be like, this is my ministry. They are making ministry happen for these students.
Yeah. And so what's the benefit of that? How, like, obviously time is a huge one because like you can't be everywhere at once. And so if you try to be everywhere at once, you're obviously going to first off fail epically. But then also like you have no time for like yourself or your family or anything else. What are some other benefits of taking the time to build and work on these systems?
Well, there's two parts. I would say one is biblical. Acts 6 has a great story of the apostles talking about like we can't teach ministry and feed people. Like we can't do both. And the story is they basically bring like 7 leaders on just to do the food side of it. And they're like, that is your ministry now so that we can get back to teaching and sharing Jesus. So one is biblical. Like we see it in the early church of Acts, and I think understanding that is okay. Like some people, I think there is the weight of I have to do it all. I gotta order the pizza. Like I gotta get the ice cream. I gotta be the guy. I gotta organize the games. I have to be it all. Like the apostles are like, no, our focus right now is going to be on teaching scripture, leading others to Christ, and for us to make that happen effectively, we need someone else to take on the load of something else.
Yeah.
And I think that is just that's biblical. And truthfully, and I would speak to your pastor, speak to your speak to your elders, speak to your board, your committees. They will tell you that is the reason why you're here. Like that is a job description that you have. You may have people in your ministry that are great teachers and great small group leaders. But that is a huge part of it. And maybe you're the food guy and someone else is leading for a change. You can mix that up. But knowing that, biblically, we're called to spread that leadership out.
Yeah.
I think practically too is that for yourself, I'm just going to be frank. It is not a good look when you are the guy doing everything or the girl doing everything. Because one, it's boiled down to a couple things, especially in our church now. Like when we've asked for help, people will go, well, I didn't know you needed help. Like we've seen you running around doing it all. Like there is like people are watching all the time.
Yeah.
And when you are the guy that's kind of like you're just on everything, people will just assume and say they got it covered.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get burnt. You're going to be like 6 months down the road, you're going to say, man, I am exhausted.
Sure.
And you won't have any systems in place to allow you to just take a step back and watch ministry continue to happen.
Yeah. And so you've mentioned these systems a few times. What are some examples of systems that you have in your ministry right now that might not necessarily can be duplicated to another church, but like what are some systems that y'all have found in your context that work and that y'all use on a regular basis?
Yeah, we've got really simple ones. We have a food coordinator. And that started out as someone who was just scheduling meals for Sunday nights. But it's grown because that's not the only time we meet, So we would have, your midweek meeting or Sunday mornings. And, Sunday mornings, you got to have, donuts for the kids. And for a long time, I was picking them up or another staff member was picking them up. Or, we would order drinks to stock the fridge for the kids, or water bottles, and we would order it and pull it up and stock it. And it started, the food coordinating is like a team of 2 or 3 people just asking parents to provide meals or supply funding. And now I have a food coordinator that handles all the food for student ministry all the time. They handle ordering the food. They get with the kitchen staff. They buy things, and it's just letting them know where your needs are, and being like, "Hey, you're already doing this. Would you have some insight to how to do this part better?"
Yeah.
That's
That personally sounds amazing. Being the person
Yeah.
that makes the Sam's run to go
Right,
refill
exactly.
the fridge, like that personally sounds awesome. Where can I sign up for one of these food coordinators?
And that's the thing. That is still me sometimes. Like that is okay. That is still you.
Yeah.
But if it's week after week after week falling on your shoulders, that is not sustainable. Like the Sunday you've got to go early and prep for this, or the Sunday that you leave for camp. Oh, I forgot to get donuts. I'm leaving for camp. There's like 2 or 3 kids left at Sunday school or whatever that didn't get donuts, and or I took high schoolers and didn't get it for the middle schoolers. Like you'll see where there have been gaps, and you're like, if you wait for some of those moments, sometimes it's
Sure.
how could I have prevented that?
Sure. What else?
Yeah, food coordinator was a big one. We also have been. This is one we're still struggling with, but tech and AV is huge, and that is like a big thing to me. And Brent, you know this, when we talked, like when we were talking like worship stuff and programming wise, like that's a big thing on my list. We don't need the flair, but I like for things to go smooth.
Yep.
And so really the system kind of started was like, I would build the program and someone would come in and just run it.
Yeah.
And it was really simple. And then we added a lighting program, and I would build it, give real careful instructions. The person would come in and run it. That is something that's hard for me to let go of.
Sure.
Those are the ones that I'm like, no, these have to be done a really specific way. And when they don't get done that way, it doesn't necessarily like I don't lose it.
Yeah.
But I'm always thinking of like, okay, how can I ensure that this person coming in is communicated, like that's clearly communicated of what needs to happen. And so we did it for like a week straight. We had a volunteer come in and did it for a week straight for our VBS program. And by the end of the week, he was like, yeah, no problem. I got it. I got the cues. I know what to do. I know how to get everything going. And he kind of did it for VBS, and we took a break. And now jumping back into the fall, he's like, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
He's like, I had a chance to really get to know and be in the dirt and figure it out. And that's where I want to be. And I trust him to an extent. But being able to just relinquish some of that. One of my mentors says, she always tells me, you multiply ministry through leadership. And a part of that is just being able to relinquish some of those responsibilities and know that you may have standards or expectations and things will get there. But the more that people have some of that ownership and can just be in the dirt and know that it's okay to learn and mess up and figure it out, especially if that's really their niche, if that's really their calling, if that's really where they feel like they want to serve.
Yeah.
You can provide so much. Because this is not the guy that came up to me and was like, I'm an AV guy, I'm a tech guy. This was like someone who helps out in the kitchen and needed a job during VBS. And I was like, I need an extra person. And so kind of developing that. I think the big side to all of those is to not wait for someone to jump in. Don't just wait for someone to come up to you and be like, here, I'm ready to do these things. Give someone an inch and let them take a mile. Give someone just a little bit of responsibility and then let them have ownership of it.
Sure. Well, and I think that builds a bunch of different things within the person or the student that you're letting do that as well. You're going into the opportunity to where not only is it going to help you, but ultimately it's going to give them opportunities to grow and develop skill sets that will benefit them in the future as well, which is really, really great. And so when we do systems kind of like what you're talking about, our systems might not look exactly the same, but we have systems as far as this year we have a entirely student-led band, and it's the first time that we've ever had it. I'm super super excited about it. But talk about things that you don't really want to let go, or things that you want to really really like micromanage. It's like, I want y'all to succeed, but I know how to succeed because I've already done this, kind of thing like that. And so getting to the point to where you really know how to, like you said, let go, kind of
Yeah.
drop the safeguards, drop the worries, and actually let them succeed and thrive. The benefits from that are far greater than anything you can do on your own. And then also you get to sit back and you get to say, hey, like, this person is doing amazing things because they were given the opportunity to do that. And so that can be from small group leaders where they lead and teach their entire group, to having a worship leader, to having a AV tech guy, to having a food coordinator, which still sounds amazing. Um, but all of these opportunities are just great ways to not only take you off the stage, which I think one of the greatest things any youth pastor can do is have the opportunity that when they leave a youth ministry, it doesn't like leave a tremendous hole when they're gone. If
Yeah.
that youth ministry can continue on the systems like you're talking about that are already in place, that are already established, that are going, where they can step out and it's barely like they've been missed. That is ultimately the goal that we as youth pastors need to be working towards, because we don't want these kids to like lose a youth group when we get called somewhere else, or when we
Yeah.
get called to be a senior pastor, or when we get called into another field. um, I, I think a lot of times, and granted, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that are called into ministry full time or youth ministry full time, and they'll do it for the extent of their professional career. But a lot of times that's not the case. And sometimes youth ministry is a season. And so, what happens when you're an awesome youth pastor, but you get called into teaching later and you didn't set up anything as far as a system where volunteers can come in and take your place? And so that's super, super important. And this leads to my next question. Do you have an example of a time that you did ministry in a way that was not sustainable? And you kind of got to see the failure from that?
Well, and I'll speak. Yeah. Yeah. We, even just last spring, we felt like we were being called into launching a small group program. We had the normal, consistent weekly youth group, and we had some different classes, and we were struggling seeing kids, just schedules getting busy, and we were feeling like, hey, what if we created an opportunity for you to come and just be with your group, be with the people you know. You have great conversations. We can have meals provided. It can be any time of the day. It can be any week. We'll figure it out. Well, we had all of the systems lined up. We knew, okay, every group is going to need a coordinator. Every group is going to need a leader to teach. And we had groups already split in our normal weekly thing. Like, we would have a time where, yeah, you would go to your groups. And we had the systems in place. However, understanding that the kids are involved and busy, knowing that, you got to also know that the parents are equally as busy and, lined up. And when you're launching something brand new, there is a little bit of, you know you're going to bear a majority of the burden, but you want to start to share some of that with maybe your trusted leaders or your already established leaders. Well, we kind of already have a system where we give a static timeline for volunteers. We say, hey, can you do this for 6 months? Can you do this for a year? And then we always go back and ask, because that is a little bit less intimidating than, can you do this for the rest of your life? Like, than just like leaving it.
Will you commit to doing a Sunday school class until your kids have kids?
Yeah. And some people will be like, yes.
Yeah, 100%. There are some that are like, yes, like, sign me up until I am too old to get to church. Like, I am your person. But that's not always the case.
Right. Especially when you're recruiting new volunteers and you want, new members of the church to get plugged in somewhere, or new parents of students that have moved up from your kids ministry into student ministry. You want to be able to, if they've done all this for kids ministry, you want to give them a place for student ministry. So we always will say, like, can you do this for a certain time? So we had all these slots lined up. And then we just kind of were like, spoke to our lead team, spoke to our committee, our student ministry committee. We talked to all the other staff, and we just went out and we had it all lined up. And then we got the question, well, what does that person do? And we were like, well, you'll have to plan the house that they're going to be at, and you'll have to plan every meal that they'll have, and you'll probably need to contact all the families. But then all of our descriptions were scattered because we hadn't come up with quality job descriptions, which is really now, like, that's like my big thing is anytime I offer any volunteer, program, anytime a volunteer opportunity, I'm always given how many hours can you expect to spend a week on it. I'll give you your exact responsibilities, who you're going to be talking to. A job description was key to our system, and we did not do a good job of providing a good job description. We had it in our minds, but when we scattered to recruit people, we kind of were just all over the place, and we didn't have a real concise, here's exactly what you'll be doing, here's who you'll be talking to, here's how many hours a week you can expect to, spend on this. And so we had some coordinators do a great job and, blew it out of the park, planned the entire semester, like the first week ahead, where every student was going to be, the list of students. And then we had like 2 coordinators who did it for a couple weeks and then was like, I don't know if I should be doing this. And then it was up to us to do the rest of it. So we were coordinating and teaching, and we're like, that's not sustainable. We cannot do it both. We've got to have someone come in. But we did not do a great job at having that foundation. And so we just kind of were like, well, be doing a mix of this, but it'll be different for this group. And things just got messy. And so we had some successful small groups, but we failed at a majority of them because it was so hard to coordinate with some of those students and families. And it led to us sitting down in the summer and going, let's not do that again. Let's kind of go back and let's see if we can, let's take a break, let's take a step back, and let's go back to where we know people know what to do.
Sure.
Because a small group program may be great. But for us, it was just some lack of, good preparation on our end. And it's something simple. It's not like, oh man, we dropped the ball in this massive way. It's as simple as, what are your responsibilities?
Yeah. And I think that brings up a good point, that systems aren't built overnight. And so with that, a lot of times when you're developing new systems or you're coming up with new ideas to build what you have or what you want to have, brainstorming through your processes and procedures with multiple teams, multiple people, multiple times is probably not a terrible idea, because that can cause you to have a lot or that can cause you to avoid a lot of headaches. I have a story on the other side. My last youth ministry job, I had a great volunteer program. We had roughly 50 kids. I had 10 to 12 adults that were parents coming up every single Wednesday to teach. It was awesome. They all led different small groups. Everything was going great. And I was like, "Hey, I'm leaving," and they were like, and I was like, "No, no, no, it's fine." And I apparently I thought I was better at this than I was, because I was like, "No, it's fine. Like that, you are gonna like keep this going. I trust you. I'm gonna give you curriculum to cover the next year of me, like of being without me. I'm gonna give you a booklet with all of the trips we normally do, when we normally do them, how to organize them, how to schedule them. I'm gonna give you all of the social media logins, the email logins, everything." And I mean, I concocted this like folder, and I'm talking like, I mean, folder
Yeah. Yeah.
full of stuff. And the thing is like, I still, even with all of my preparation, even with all of the processes that I went through and all the things that I tried to battle ahead of time, I still got to the point to where I missed a really, really big thing. And there was no support system for these two volunteers that were leading. And so while it did last and it did work for a couple months, after 3 months of them doing it week to week, 4 months of them doing it week to week, and a new youth pastor not even being remotely close on the horizon, they gave up, because it was too much. They couldn't do it anymore. And so it was like, man, I felt like I was a failure. And I was like, but I don't understand. Like, I threw all of this
Yeah.
time and effort and everything like that. But like you're saying, is like sometimes you can put all your best effort and best intention, but sometimes you can still miss those minor details. And those minor details can sink a ship if it's not
Yeah.
uh, properly addressed and cared for. And so, with that, though, a lot of times also is when we don't have sustainable systems that can pull us from, or that can keep us on the right track. Sometimes that'll also pull us away, like you said. I mean, when you're starting a new ministry, like small group ministry, it is something that takes a lot of time, and sometimes you have to kind of just take lead and say, "Hey, I'm going to do that." But a lot of times, like, we don't anticipate how much time it's actually going to take. And then we're taking away from our families, we're taking away from our own time, we're taking away from time that's allotted to other ministries that we do. And it gets to be a really, really dicey, sketchy situation quickly. So for the listeners that are listening to this that are like, a food coordinator sounds nice, I'd really like to have a food coordinator. How would you recommend someone start building a system for their ministry, and which systems would you recommend that they start with?
I think, well, and just kind of speaking back to your story, because Brent, I did the same exact thing. Like, I put together like an 18-month plan. I bought all this curriculum already. Like, I printed out, I made folders for everyone who's a part of that leadership team. And, you know, and yeah, they still don't have someone. I mean, it's been a year and a half, and
Yeah.
they were able to keep things afloat. But the key to it is that ownership.
Yeah.
And really, like, that's been something that's been heavy on, like, just my heart is, or like, not heavy on my heart, but like, that's been something that I've been really trying to focus on,
Yeah.
is providing ownership. And that is like recognizing like who they are. So I worked with our like graphics coordinator and working on new ones now, but I was like, I want name tags with job titles, and a place for them to come. We have like a volunteer green room we're setting up currently, place for them to come and get coffee away from the students. That's where they come and pick up everything. Our children's has like a whole full kitchen, and they have like little lockers and cubbies for the volunteers, the nursery workers. Like, there is identity in that of you are part of something that is, I'm not Stephen's pawn. I'm not Brent's, right hand. I'm not just another warm body.
Yeah.
I have ownership in it. And there are some simple things you can do to create that. Is a couple things that I really started doing. I share an ongoing list of who is doing what with staff, all my staff. Because if you're at a church like mine, you've got overlap.
Yeah, sure.
And I imagine your church has overlap too. You've got volunteers with kids and students, and there are times they do both. And if you are aware, like, one of the things that really helped me is being aware of what they do. Like, wow, you're in our mission. Like, you're really, you're a big part of our missions team. Hey, that's great. Like, I want you to do missions with our students. Like, I'd love for you to do, you have a student now. Like, can you do that? And kind of using what they're already doing, because that's something they're passionate about. If you have kids, if they have students in both, maybe helping create hybrid activities, help me plan. You've got a student in both. Your input in this is integral to what I'm about to plan. Find what else they're doing in your church and be aware of that. When I first got here, I was like discovering all these things. People were telling me names and like, oh, go talk to this person, go talk to that person. Well, it's taken me a while to like figure out how much this person, what board they serve on, where they've, what have they done in the past? How long have they been here? Just knowing that helps me get to know them more and connect with them on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So like when I'm specifically targeting volunteers, like I'm always looking for people to, have shared interest. Always being aware of what else they're doing in the church. Because it may not always be obvious. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But I want them to also have an identity here. I think a lot of times, especially when I initially started, I was looking for people that weren't put in anywhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're free. You're
You're not doing
fresh
anything. Why don't you come join me?
New blood. Like, you're like, let's like jump in. But typically the people that really started to serve were people who were doing multiple things.
Yeah.
One, because they love your church.
Yeah.
And be aware of that. Like, if they love your church, they love your student ministry. I've had a lot of people recently who don't have students that have been coming out in the fall and been like, hey, I want to help out this fall, and creating an opportunity for them. So that's a big part, I think, is just connecting and kind of giving some of that ownership. It takes a while.
Sure. And
I think on the other half of that is create that quality job description. Like, that is something that I cannot now, learning from my mistake, I was like, we cannot let that go unheard of.
Yeah.
They need to know how much time they can expect. If you've got detail-oriented people, they need to know who to talk to, who to call for help, where to expect things, when to expect things, what kind of situations are they going to be in? Is this a week to week? Is this once a month?
Yeah.
Sit through, figure all of that out before you talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Even now, while we're revamping and doing some different things, like one of my lead team members was like, well, give us the list. We'll start asking people. And I was like, well, I don't know what they're going to be doing yet. I was like, I don't know what that's going to look like. So let me get you the description, and then you can ask people, and you can really talk to people about it.
Yeah.
Don't just, that was my biggest mistake early on, was pulling in 10 to 15 people, and then 5 of them
We
had
need
a role.
volunteers, and then I don't have anything for you to do.
Yeah, like 7 of them are standing in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, and then they never come back because that is their experience.
Yeah.
Be intentional with what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and how long. We give that, hey, can you do this for 6 months? And then just kind of make that list, color code it. They don't need to know, like if they see the spreadsheet, they don't need to know why they're red. They don't need to know why they're blue. You can keep track of that. And then ask them again, like jump in it. You did a great job. Take them out to lunch. And then lastly, connect them with other volunteers.
Yeah.
My parents usually already know each other. But I've had some students who are here like 2 or 3 times, and like they are ready to jump in, but they're a new parent, a new student, and they need to know who's doing what.
Yeah.
And volunteers need to do that too. Like parents need to know, I'm not just Bobby Joe's mom. Oh, I have a student and I do this.
Yeah.
You know, and I am a middle school girl group leader.
Sure. No, that's awesome.
So those are my, I don't know, I wasn't taking count.
No, you're totally good. And then finally, do you have any resources on this topic that you've read that were beneficial when you looked at it, or?
So my biggest fallback that I can recommend 10 out of 10 every time, my big rec, is there is a book that I read when I was probably about a year or 2 ago, when I was kind of starting to transition from, I'm doing everything to like, I can't do everything anymore. And that was a book called The Unstuck Church. It's by a guy named Tony Morgan. He runs a group called Unstuck Group, and it helps either new churches get started, what systems to build, what do you need to kind of like take off, or if you have a church that's like, hey, we hit that momentum, like that growth, we did a great 5 years, and now we're starting to see students graduate, or we're starting to see people leave or move, and you start to feel that decline. Systems to kind of get you back and ramped back up. And I read through, and I was like, I'm taking notes, I'm writing dates, I'm writing situations, because and that was just a big like, I'm going to try and apply everything to where I can be better.
Yeah.
And like what am I experiencing right now, because you'll read it, but it's also just, I mean, it's got great biblical backing.
Sure.
Like, you know, the Acts 6 story that I told, you know, like that, he highlights that in the book, and, you know, and it talks like the church isn't designed for the pastor to do every funeral, like every, you know, visit, every single task. You know, the joke is like, it's called the body for a reason.
Yeah.
Like,
No, 100%.
we know that.
Yeah.
But
Another resource that I would throw on that, if you haven't read it, is Sustainable Youth Ministry. It is a fantastic book. We'll have a link for both of these books in the show notes that you can find on our website when this episode airs. But fantastic resources. Both of them are great, and great reads by great people. But finally, Stephen, this has been awesome. How can people connect with you? Social media, email. We have different guests do different things. So however people can reach out to you, what's the best option?
oh man, well, I'm not super active on. I mean, I'm semi-active on social media, but I post stuff on Instagram when I travel or with my family or for ministry. I don't tweet a lot or thread a lot. I don't know what the context is.
Yeah.
But I love to have conversations.
Is it still called tweets? Isn't it called like X now or something?
I don't know. I've seen my students keep telling me to be real and all these things now.
Yeah.
I don't.
There's so much stuff that I'm just like, I don't have time for that.
No, I mean, I Instagram's been a big one. When I travel, that's where we normally post. But connect wise, I mean, if you have experiences or questions, like I would say, I just say call me or email me. It's, don't walk through it alone. Let's do it together.
Yeah. And we'll put all of Stephen's contact information in the show notes as well. So if you are listening to this episode and you'd like to reach out to him or just touch base and talk shop as far as youth ministry goes, that's totally cool. And then also, just if you want to talk about the episode as well, like I said, we will have all of those, all of his contact information in the show notes. But that is all we have for this show. If you're a frequent listener of our podcast, all we ask is that you do your part to get our podcast out to the greater student ministry audience. Share our podcast with your youth pastor friends on social media, or tag a specific episode that really stood out to you. Maybe it was this one. Either way, be sure to tag us in the post on your favorite platform using @TalkStudentMen. And then finally, if you'd like to be like Stephen and come on the show in the future, you can reach out to us on social media or send us an email, podcast@studentministryconversations.org, and we'd love to set up a time that you can come on the show with us. But Stephen, this has been awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun, a great topic. And honestly, I think this is a topic that could be revisited time and time and time again, because it is a really, really important one when it comes to thinking about the week in and week out stuff that we do in ministry. But for everyone listening to this, man, we hope y'all have a great week. And until next episode, we hope that you are inspired, you are encouraged. And if there's anything we can do for you guys, reach out to us. We love you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see y'all next week.